The alarm has not rung yet, but you are already awake, heart slamming as if you just sprinted through a hallway that kept stretching longer with every step. The bedroom is quiet, the curtains glow with early light, and the panic from the dream still presses against your ribs like a held breath. You were standing at the front of a crowded room, everyone waiting, and you realized you had no notes, no slides, not a single word prepared. This is not the first time you have woken up from that exact scene, and you are not a student anymore, and there is no presentation scheduled for today. Why would the same dream return season after season, long after the real-life danger has disappeared? The easy answer sits right on the surface. The dream is leftover anxiety from a time when you really did face tests and audiences and the possibility of public failure. Most people would say it is just a memory the brain keeps replaying because the original stress stamped it deeply. That answer sounds reasonable enough to quiet the question. So you get up, start the coffee, and try to ignore the unease that follows you through the morning. But the explanation begins to crack the next time the dream comes, because you notice something that does not fit the leftover anxiety story. The dream returns not when you are thinking about school or old mistakes, but during weeks when your adult life is steady, even successful. You have earned promotions, delivered real presentations, and proven yourself again and again, yet the dream slides back in anyway, unchanged. So the question sharpens. What is the point of a recurring fear that seems completely disconnected from current reality? To understand what is happening, you first need to know that a recurring dream is a dream that repeats with enough similarity that you recognize it as the same story. Many people experience at least one recurring dream in their lifetime, and the themes often cluster around being chased, falling, losing teeth, or being unprepared in a public moment. The images are different for everyone, but the emotional signature is remarkably consistent. A surge of helplessness in a situation that feels suddenly out of control. Until fairly recently, the most famous explanations treated every dream like a secret message written in code, with the real meaning hidden somewhere in childhood wishes or buried trauma. That approach can make a person feel like a detective in their own mind, but it often leads to endless digging without any clear way to check if the solution is right. Modern dream research approaches the puzzle from a different angle, and it begins with a simple idea called the continuity hypothesis. The continuity hypothesis says that what you dream about is connected to what you are thinking about, worrying about, and trying to sort out while you are awake. Your waking concerns do not disappear when you close your eyes. They change their clothes, borrow a face from memory, and walk onto a stage built from your hippocampus and your fears. Under this view, a dream about standing unprepared is not necessarily a memory of a real past event, but a translation of a present feeling that has a similar shape. The feeling might be a quiet, unacknowledged sense that you are being evaluated somewhere in your life right now. At work, in a relationship, or by a standard you have never named. Now notice the twist. The dream is not telling you that you will fail. It is showing you that part of your waking brain already feels as though you are being tested. This is the first major turn in the story. The dream is not an anchor dragging you backward into the past, but a barometer registering the emotional pressure of the present. One well-supported idea bridges waking life and dream life directly. Sleep helps the brain process emotions and consolidate memories. During rapid eye movement sleep, when most vivid dreaming happens, the parts of the brain that handle emotions become especially active, while the parts that handle logic and time grow quieter. Think of the sleeping brain as a quiet editor who sorts through the day's emotional clips, keeps some, blends others, and tries to weave them into a story that the rest of the mind can handle. In a single night, that is useful. A scary dream about a falling elevator after a tough conversation might help the emotion lose some of its sharp edge by morning. This repetition is the clue that something in waking life keeps generating the same emotional challenge without ever fully resolving it. The dream is like a smoke detector that goes off every time the kitchen gets warm, not just when the house is on fire. So the pressing question is not what the dream picture means in some symbolic dictionary, but what modern situation is producing enough heat to trigger the same old alarm. To follow that question further, you need to understand a theory called threat simulation, which suggests that dreaming about frightening situations may be the brain's way of practicing for real threats. In a safe sleep environment, your mind can rehearse running from a pursuer, searching for a missing document, or standing speechless, all without any real-world cost. That rehearsal may have helped your ancestors survive. A remembered dream about a predator could sharpen vigilance in waking life. But a dream that rehearses only one particular threat over decades suggests that the brain keeps tagging the same emotional risk as current, even when you have consciously moved past it. Now imagine a person who started having an unprepared dream during a truly stressful period, perhaps a final exam season in college. At first, the dream matched a real and specific pressure, and the brain noted that the pressure felt enormous. Years later, that same person may face a performance review, a difficult conversation, or a new responsibility that stirs a similar blend of uncertainty and exposure. Consciously, they may tell themselves it is no big deal, but on a deeper level, the emotional signature matches the old pattern as closely as a key fits a lock. The dreaming brain then reaches for the most vivid image it has to represent that feeling. The old classroom, the missing notes, the staring faces. This explains why interpreting the dream solely as an unresolved school memory often changes nothing. You are treating the costume while the actor remains on stage. And it also explains why people can have the same nightmare for years without being diagnosed with any anxiety disorder. The dream is not necessarily a sign of pathology. It can simply be a signal that a sensitive internal gauge keeps reacting to a recurring life situation. What makes that gauge so persistent is a process your brain performs every night: emotional memory reactivation. During sleep, the brain replays recently learned experiences and tags which parts should be stored together with their emotional weight. If you go to bed with an unsettled worry, the brain may overtag that worry, strengthening its connection to whatever old scenario already carries the same emotional color. The result is a loop. A modern stressor reactivates an old fear image. The dream rehearses it, and the emotional charge is refreshed enough that the dream can be triggered again next week or next month. This is not a sign that you are secretly broken. It is a sign that your brain is remarkably consistent at noticing patterns, even when the pattern is painful. But there is a complication here that keeps the mystery alive, and it is the fact that some people never stop having their recurring dream even after they identify the waking trigger. You might know perfectly well that the unprepared dream tends to arrive before every family gathering, and still the dream marches in anyway. This happens because conscious understanding and emotional learning operate at different speeds and sometimes in different rooms of the mind. Part of you that can name the pattern sits in the prefrontal cortex and speaks in clear sentences. The part that generates the dream speaks in images, sensations, and silent alarms. Simply telling yourself the dream meaning is resolved is like translating a fire alarm into English and expecting the bell to stop ringing. Furthermore, not every recurring dream fits neatly into a single emotional trigger, because human minds are rarely tidy enough for one explanation to cover everything. A dream can mix yesterday's frustration with a song lyric, a scene from a movie, a physical sensation from a cramped leg, and a long-forgotten memory from third grade. Some researchers who study dreaming warn against overinterpreting because the sleeping brain also does housekeeping that has nothing to do with deep personal messages. It can replay fragments simply because the memory circuits fired randomly during rapid eye movement, and the mind, forever a storyteller, stitched the fragments into a plot. So the recurring dream may be meaningfully connected to your emotional life, or it may be partially noise, or it may be a blend of both, and certainty is rarely a luxury you get to keep. And yet, something important shifts when you stop treating the dream as a riddle to crack once and hold the wrong kind of stillness. Return to the person waking up from the unprepared dream, the one who is successful by every external measure and cannot fathom why the dream keeps returning. They start to track the dream not by its images, but by what happened the day before it appeared, and a pattern slowly rises to the surface. The dream, it turns out, is not warning about a future catastrophe. It is catching an emotion that the waking self has already denied. The feeling of standing with nothing prepared might be a translation of a feeling that you are hiding your uncertainty behind a composed face at the office, or in a close relationship, or about your health. Now, the dream becomes less of a haunting and more of an uncomfortable but useful companion, a biased friend who exaggerates but almost never shows up without a reason. This reorientation matters immensely because it moves you away from asking what is wrong with your past and toward asking what is calling for gentle attention right now. And that question is both smaller and more powerful. Not why am I broken, but what am I carrying today that feels too heavy to name while the sun is up? There is one more crucial twist that has been forming quietly beneath this whole exploration, and it may change how you understand every recurring dream you have ever had. The twist is that the meaning of a recurring dream is not fixed. It evolves as your life evolves, because the same image can point to new situations that share only an emotional shape. The dream of the forgotten exam might have meant academic stress at 18, imposter syndrome at 30, and the fear of letting down a partner at 40, all using the same set. If you treat the dream as a code with one secret answer, you lock yourself inside the interpretation you made years ago, and you miss the new conversation your mind is trying to start. The dream is not a photograph of a single wound. It is more like a recurring invitation to check your inner barometer, written in the only language your sleeping brain has available. Now, at last, the central insight rises into full view, and it answers the question that opened this whole journey. Why does the same dream return, even when the original danger is gone? The dream returns not because you are trapped in the past, but because your brain has reused an old, emotionally potent file to signal a present, emotionally similar situation that you have not yet acknowledged. In other words, the recurrence is a feature, not a malfunction. It is your mind's most well-worn pathway for saying, something right now feels like this. The prepared notes that were missing in the dream represent whatever form of readiness you currently believe you lack. Whether it is competence, courage, enough sleep, or the right words for a hard conversation. This means the question is no longer, what does the dream mean, but rather, what in my life right now feels like standing under a spotlight with empty hands? The search for meaning becomes less archaeological, digging through childhood debris, and more meteorological, reading the emotional weather of the present moment. For many people, simply noticing the connection between dream timing and daytime dismissal is enough to soften the dream's grip over time. Others find that the dream lingers for years even after understanding, and that is not a failure of insight. It is a reminder that some emotional circuits learn faster than others. The climax of this story is not the promise that understanding will erase the dream, but the realization that a recurring dream can be transformed from an enemy into a surprisingly honest informant. And that transformation happens when you stop trying to decode the imagery into a single secret and start asking what waking life feels the same way right now. Now return one final time to the early morning bedroom, the racing heart, the quiet room that still feels charged with the dream's leftover electricity. This time, instead of pushing the feeling away or searching for a distant cause, you lie still and ask gently, what does this feel like in my present life? Perhaps an answer surfaces quickly. A project you have been avoiding, a relationship tension you have been minimizing, a worry about your body that you have not spoken aloud. Or perhaps nothing surfaces at all, and you simply notice the feeling of unpreparedness as weather moving through, without a demand that you fix it before breakfast. Either way, the dream's power has shifted, because you have shifted the relationship from helpless witness to curious listener. You can also take one practical, modest step if you choose. Keep a small notebook by the bed and jot down not only the dream images, but what happened the day before and how you felt. Over weeks or months, a personal pattern may become visible that no book or expert could hand you. A pattern that is uniquely yours because your life is uniquely yours. A word of caution belongs here. While many recurring dreams are a normal feature of an emotionally active mind, a small proportion can reflect high stress, unresolved trauma, or a sleep disorder. If a nightmare recurs so often or with such intensity that it steals sleep night after night and follows you into the daylight hours, speaking with a qualified mental health professional is a form of self-respect, not weakness. For most people, though, the recurring dream is a far gentler visitor. An old song the brain replays when the emotional atmosphere feels familiar, not a prophecy of doom. And you can hold this understanding alongside a humble admission. No single theory of dreaming explains every dream, every person, or every culture's experience of sleep. Different cultures have connected dreams to ancestors, the divine, the body, or the future, in ways that scientific psychology cannot fully translate, and that richness also deserves respect. What remains steady across time and tradition is the intuition that recurrent dreams mean something, and modern research supports the idea that they often mean something about your present emotional life. So the next time you wake from the same old story, you can recognize that your mind is not broken, not reliving an accident, but trying, in its ancient image-based way, to help you notice what needs care. The dream does not tell you who you are. It only points, with a trembling hand, toward the part of your waking life that feels a little too bright and a little too exposed, and invites you to look.